Welcome to Global Tax Talks Tax in 60 Seconds. I'm Will Morris, and here are some things to watch out for in the coming week. First, this week on April 2nd, what President Trump has called Liberation Day, we expect to get details of the more general tariffs the US will be levying on other countries. Over recent days, the scope of the tariffs seems to have shifted around a little, and perhaps shrunk slightly, but we do expect them to be quite extensive. One question, of course, is on what they're levied and how high they'll go. But another important question, which also has implications for tax, is will other countries retaliate? We especially expect further US tariffs on the EU, and it's worth noting that at the recent EU tax symposium in Brussels, Mr. Hoekstra, the EU Commissioner for, among other things, tax, had a not-so-subtle message, saying, if we're hit, we'll hit back harder. We can also expect countermeasures from China, and in both cases, it's likely that the responses will be asymmetric, i.e. not just on tangible goods, but also on services, and perhaps also involving the use of the tax system. Anyway, much more to follow on this. And expect more on our favorite topic of Pillars 1 and 2. Two interesting Pillar 1 related items from last week. First, the lower house of the Indian Parliament approved, as part of the annual finance bill, the repeal of India's 6% equalization levy on online advertising services. This follows last year's announcement of the repeal of the broader 2% equalization levy on e-commerce. The US has identified such levies as being discriminatory, even if not DSTs as such, and the Indian finance minister made clear last week that this was, in quotes, to address the uncertainty in international economic conditions. And second, the UK Chancellor of the Exchequer hinted that the UK might reconsider its own DST as a way of diffusing tensions with the US. While this provoked protests in certain quarters, were the Chancellor to go in this direction, her position was given some intellectual air cover by a blog from a distinguished Oxford University economist, who wrote that the UK DST might itself arguably be regarded as a tariff. So the argument might go, sacrificing a UK tariff to avoid a US tariff might be justified. Finally, on Pillar 2, some news out of Germany. While the new German government is still being formed, last Thursday, the CDU-SPD coalition issued a statement saying that it would be sticking to the minimum tax. Comments by some CDU state-level finance ministers had raised the question whether the new government might change course, but that now looks unlikely. The statement said that the coalition would support work on further simplification, which P2 certainly needs, but it also contained the ambiguous statement, we are monitoring the effects of international divergences on the global tax architecture and will also work at the European level to ensure that this does not put our companies at a disadvantage in international competition. Now, I can see at least three possible ways of reading this. The first possibility is that this is simply not very meaningful boilerplate language. The second possibility is that they're saying that if the world/EU moves towards a US-only solution, then the German government will seek some appropriate loosening of the rules for German businesses, even though it's unclear right now what that would look like. And a third possibility is if there's a US-only solution that would disadvantage German companies, then the German government would oppose that. We'll see which one is right, and indeed how US tariffs on the EU may affect this. But, safe to say, the uncertainty continues. Anyway, thanks for joining, and come back next week so that you stay global tax ready.